Go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for the start of our summer series collaboration of Stay at Home with Pitzer College Art Galleries. My name is Brandon Kyle and I am the Director of Alumni and Family Engagement, and we are tremendously thrilled to have you here for our first lecture of the summer with Cavanaugh, class of 1991. Our office, along with our incredible art galleries team, are excited to bring back this programming as a way to continue to connect our Pitzer community during this time of social distancing. This will include a series of 3 to 4 high caliber art discussions that will occur over the course of the summer. Each of these sessions will be facilitated by our talented curator, Kiara Innes, who has been the curator and director of Pitzer College Art Galleries since 2007. We are very grateful to her and Chris's willingness to partner with the Office of Advancement on this very special community engagement opportunity. And with that said, I'd like to introduce you to Kiara.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Before going ahead, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank the Office of Alumni and Family Engagement for partnering with us. And very special thanks to Chris Michno, Exhibitions and Communications Manager, Pitzer College Art Galleries, for his help in coordinating and promoting these events. During the summer stay-at-home series, which this is the first of, we are connecting with our talented alumni working in the arts as artists, curators, filmmakers, and art advisors. For our first one, we have the great pleasure of hearing from artist Sean Cavanaugh. Sean graduated from Pitzer in 1991 with a BA in Art and Environmental Studies. He is an example of one of those rare individuals who has managed to stay true to their original goal of being an artist, which is no easy task in our world today. Sean maintains a studio in New York where he lives and works, and shows his artworks at museums and galleries throughout the US, as well as further afield. Today, Sean will be discussing his artwork and its relationship to the natural world, which is reflected in his deeply sensitive and highly detailed studies of trees, clouds, rocks, boulders, and other natural forms, which are exquisitely rendered in oil, watercolor, and pencil. This conversation will last approximately 50 minutes and will be followed by 10 minutes of questions from you. If you'd like to ask something, please send it to me via chat and I will pass it along to Sean. Again, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Sean Cavanaugh back to Pitzer. Please join me in giving him a virtual hand.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to come. It's really, something like this makes you think about your work in a different way. Having to present it to other people and talk about it makes you really dig into it a little bit more. And I feel like it's a little bit of a virtual show for you guys, so it's really nice. In this time of COVID, I've been working upstate, my family's property in the Catskills. And I have a studio up here, luckily. And it's been, you know, very easy to focus because there hasn't been much else going on. And the rest of the art world, the business side of things has slipped away. And I've just been working on some of the pieces that you'll see actually were started a year or two ago and never got very far because I didn't have enough time, and they never traveled back to the studio in the city, and so they were just sort of waiting here mothballed, and it was kind of nice to have them started. And so I didn't have a blank slate in front of me. I was able to dive right into something that I already had an idea of where I might be going, because I think there's nothing more intimidating than a beautiful white sheet of paper or canvas just staring at you with nothing on it. So it's nice to have some start sketched in to just be able to walk in and go with it. So I don't know. Whenever you're ready, we can go into the photos of and start getting your visual tour. Here we go. All right. So that is my little studio in the woods. It was a barn built sometime in the 20s, which was then turned into actually to an art studio. A painter, Georgina Klickgard, who's fairly well known up in the Catskills, she painted in there and actually retrofitted it for her studio. It then went kind of feral and was unused. And then when my family purchased the property, we realized it was amazing. Just the space and the feel of the space was so great. And we had to kind of pull it apart and put it all back, put it back together. But the feel and the space didn't really change that much. But there were, things like there was a stream running under the front door that had eaten away at the floor. And, the squirrels had been living inside it for 50 years. And there was a pile of garbage about 8 feet high against one wall. So all that went away, and then it got rebuilt, and in some ways looks inside just like it did when Mrs. Klickgard was using it to paint. All right, we can shoot on to the next. All right, so that's inside. And so you see that huge window to the right is a north-looking window, and it's about, I don't know how tall it is. It's over 10 feet high. And she had done that, and then the window she had put in must have been an industrial window out of some factory building, and so we had to replace the window. But the shape of it stayed the same, and it really provides, amazing light, all day. As long as I don't get too distracted staring out the window at, animals moving by and clouds in the trees and stuff. So that piece on the easel there is the watercolor that I think was sent out in the invitation to the Zoom. So that's a piece I was working on from a photo I took in Hawaii a few years ago. But you see, the space is amazing, and I feel every day I walk in there, I feel so lucky to have it. And my friends who walk in always say, well, can we stay here? This is where we want to stay. We don't want to stay in the main house. We want to stay here, camp out in the studio. Because it just has sort of it has a sort of a secret feel to it. Like you feel like you're really, really deep in the woods, even though we're not that far from town. Okay, we can slide on to the next. All right, so this is the Salon de Refusé of posters and things that collected. Oh, there's the same painting up there again. But we created this. I was trying to figure out what to do with all these things that I loved, but that had never been framed. And I wanted something that was going to sort of adapt, that I'd be able to put work up on, but then, take it down without having to, bother or the expense of framing. So we actually just put up sheet metal on the walls and painted it. And so everything's held up with magnets. And so it's really fun, to have a mixture of, a Pink Floyd poster and, a Miro sculpture and stuff, everything in between, basically. So yeah, it changes a little bit all the time when I find new things or old things that are uncovered. Okay, so we go on to the next. We'll see. So here's a close up of one of the things that's on there. That's a friend who graduated from Pitzer a year before I did, Julia White, and this was the poster for her senior show. Does the Salathate Gallery even exist anymore? Yes, it does. So that's where I had my show too. Nice little white box, very, very clean and very simple. I remember it was blindingly hot when, there wasn't a lot of airflow in there. But so Julia White's been a friend since school. She lives up in the Northwest, and always really liked her work. I own a piece. It's hanging in my house right now. And she's great. She's been working steadily since school. And I don't know. I haven't seen her in person for years, but oh, she's here. I see. From Julie White to everyone, she's here. And she's great, and I love her work, and I'm always interested to see what she's got going on, because she doesn't look like anybody else, her stuff, and I always like it. All right, on to the next. So this was a poster for an exhibition remembering Carl Hertel. And he was one of my professors at school, and he was dyed-in-the-wool original Pitzer at some point, not during my period. He lived in a teepee for some period of time, and he said, I think the administration kind of got him to stop, because he reeked of wood smoke so badly that it was a bit distracting in class. But he had he looked like a cross between, a desert rat and Santa Claus. He wore a lot of turquoise, had a huge white beard, and he had a very calm Zen way about him. And he was one of my painting instructors later on at an independent study. And he would say something like, I'd work on something all week and I'd show it to him, and he'd just say blue. And he just kind of nod his head. And you're like, okay. I think that I'd come out of it going, I think that was a positive. I think that was a thumbs up from Carl. But something that I remember about him, one of his classes early on, I can't remember if it was freshman or sophomore year, but I can't even remember the base of the class, but one day he just said, the sky is really beautiful today. It's not a normal LA sky. He said, there are beautiful clouds out. We're going to go outside and paint clouds. And I remember we all just went out with watercolor pads and sketched clouds overhead. And it was really it was a moment I remember. And I think I actually still have the watercolor sketches I did somewhere in a folio. And I remember thinking, wow, clouds are landscapes, they're just moving, they're just changing all the time, and they're just great shapes. And he was an inspiring guy. All right, on to the next. So Jim Fuller, another professor of mine, he taught at Scripps, and I took my first really serious watercolor class with him. And I think of him often. We maintained a relationship after school. We would send each other invitations and things. And we kept up, and he'd send a note to me about my invitation. I'd send something back to him, and we had this sort of long distance thing going on. And he was just a really sweet man with really good, great technical ability. And I always think about how hard it is to teach painting. It's you're not trying to mold someone into your style, but you need to give them enough tools to get where they're trying to go. And I felt like he was really good at that. He wasn't pushing people, stylistically at all, but he was really just giving us some base, knowledge about how to move the paint around. I remember he would give really great homework, take two colors and take green and blue and yellow and make 50 greens, 50 separate greens. And it really made you think about how varied gradations you can make. And he was great. He was a great professor. And my love for watercolor really started with him. It's when I really felt like that was my medium that I loved. All right, on to the next. All right, this was a visitor at my studio maybe a couple months ago. I looked up, I was sitting at the easel, and I turned my head, I heard something at the window, and this this is quite a large bird. This is like maybe, I don't know, he's probably a foot tall, maybe. He's pretty big. It's a pileated woodpecker. And it's the kind of woodpecker that when you're in the forest and you hear him on a tree, it sounds like somebody with a small jackhammer. It's very loud. And so I tried to after I took the photo, I kind of shooed him away because I didn't want him attacking the window frame of the studio and putting a hole in it, which I'm sure he could do because his beak is like a little jackhammer. All right, on to the next. Let's see. Okay, so this is getting into how I start my work, you know, how the sort of the basis of things. So I was thinking about it, and when I was at Pitzer, I was I had set up, I don't know why, but I'd set up sort of strict rules for myself about, you know, I wasn't using photography to paint from. I only used my own sketches, and I thought it was cheating kind of. And I remember, I think it was Carl Hertel. He said, well, why don't you just take a Polaroid or something, try to work off that? You know, he's kind of was saying, do whatever you need to do to get to where you want to go. And I don't know. I had set these barriers for myself. And then over the years, I don't know, I started getting into photography, and shooting more. And I started using my own photographs as like a sketchbook, really, you know, something to go back through and search for images that would fit into a particular theme or just get inspired a different way. So these are just digital, you know, printouts off digital images. The upper left, actually, my wife gets photo credit for that. That's from Pacific Grove, a windblown Pacific Grove tree that I was really liking that shape. Next to it is just a single dragonfly wing that I found somewhere up here, and I thought was a great shape. And then the bottom three are different birch trees up here, actually all on the property, I think. And they kind of, I was shooting those when I was doing a whole series of my tree trunk series that ended up at the Lowe Art Museum in University of Miami a few years ago. And I still go back to that series, and I've done some newer stuff for it. So that was a whole grouping of just tree trunks removed from the landscape, and with, you know, no backgrounds, so they become abstractions, even though they're rendered fairly realistically. And that started some time ago, when I did a whole series of boulders, and actually some of those I showed at Pitzer now 15 years ago, and just sort of mining the idea of having no context for an item, you know, from the landscape, turns it into something totally different. You know, if you don't know how big the boulder is it as big as a house? Is it a pebble? Is it, you know, and then everybody's own, you know, it becomes the Rorschach test for everybody, and people see all kinds of different things in it when you have no context. And I really enjoyed that. All right, on to the next. All right, so this is the first finished COVID work. I had started it before things got weird, and I came back to it right as New York was shutting down. And I went up to it was almost done. And so I went up to my studio, and it was really, really strange out on the streets, like biking around. I was biking around, and it was my studio's kind of in Midtown, and it was very, very odd out on the streets. And I just went in and finished this, and I really haven't been in the studio in New York since. It's almost 3 months. So this was from a photo I took in Massachusetts near my aunt and uncle's place. And it was one of those things where I really liked the photo, but I didn't, you know, I don't know. I felt like it wasn't it was a little bit outside my wheelhouse, you know, sort of like, I felt like it was kind of old fashioned in a nice way. So this is an oil on gray paper. And I started doing these on, I don't gesso the paper or anything, so the paper is quite absorbent. And I really like the way it comes out quite matte. And I like the paper texture. So I had fun with obviously all that wood grain and the sort of the weathered buoys were good. All right, on to the next. So this is a bit of soft coral. Right as COVID hit, we foolishly or not held to our spring break plans and went to the Caribbean. And I take a underwater camera with me and I photograph strange things down there, you know, creatures and shapes and things. And I was getting into these soft corals that to me looked like some type of futuristic Apple product perhaps, or, you know, I don't know. I just love them. They have great color, great tone and color. And they don't, some of them look completely man-made in sort of a sci-fi way. So this is watercolor and gouache, and also watercolor pencil at the end, which I don't really use that much, but I borrowed some from my daughter and started using it just to get it a little denser. I don't know. I like it. All right, next. So yeah, this is also from that group. Strange, and once again, removing the rocks and things that it's sitting on, and all the other things that are growing around it, turns it into something different. And so yeah, I feel like you can focus on it more, but it also sort of takes you in a different direction. So yeah, so this is very similar in a lot of ways. But yeah, I don't know. They're strange. Yeah, I've got a lot of photos of stuff like this, and I've been thinking about doing I like to do a whole series of them because there's so many great corals, soft corals, and you know they have beautiful textures and patterns and things that seem very. They do. I mean, a lot of stuff underwater seems like it's from outer space, so it's great. All right, next. Okay, so there you can see how I used the photo of the dragonfly wing. So this was one of the pieces that I actually had. This was drawn in and tacked to a board for over a year, and it was just sitting in my studio. And the drawing was completely finished, and I don't know why I think I got a little nervous about it, and I didn't feel like I had enough time, and I didn't want to rush it. So it just sat there. So it was sort of like an animal, vegetable, mineral thing, but there's no vegetable, except maybe on top of the boulder. So those three things are all sort of from the mountain here in the Catskills. Like I found that pull tab from some ancient beer up on the mountain, and that boulder at the bottom sort of references the whole series of boulders that I did, you know, the removed from the landscape boulders. So that thing's actually probably, in real life, the boulder's probably 8 to 10 feet high. It's quite big. And yeah, so I was pleased to get back to it. And I when I painted in the pull tab, first I painted it in the pull, you know, of course it's been in the woods for probably 30 years or more. So it's got a fair amount of dirt on it. So I painted it, and when I first did it, it was clean. I didn't put the dirt on, and I realized it looked totally wrong. So I added in some nice, you know, ground in earth to make it look more like it did just coming off the ground. All right, next up. Okay, so this one is interesting to me. So this is just a view off the property. That In the distance, that's Overlook Mountain, if anybody knows the Catskills well. It's right above Woodstock, New York. So you're seeing through, you know, obviously spring has not sprung yet. We had kind of a cold late spring. But this one was interesting to me because the image I was working off of was on my phone, which did something, you know, it changed the way I was working because I couldn't look at it for very long. It kept cutting out, you know, so I was really, when I was sketching it in, I wasn't really, you know, I was using my imagination more and, you know, referring back to the photo, but not being able to look at it too intently. And in some way I feel like it pushed me back a little bit to sort of my style, maybe more like 20 years ago. I felt like it's a little bit softer and it's a little bit more abstract. And it was just this kind of a fun experiment there, instead of working off like a fixed image where I can really like be overly neurotic about it, which I can tend to do, but I was happy with it. All right, on to the next. All right, so this happens at the same time. So this is just this is my color test, right? Which sort of turns into a piece. And I have them in my flat file, you know, at the studio, and it's almost like, what was it called? Automatic drawing. Like when I'm doing it, I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just kind of filling in areas and letting the brush go, and, you know, and sometimes things come out of it, and, you know, it's sort of like, it's a very strange and organic thing, but I have fun with it because I'm really not an abstract painter, even though you know, sometimes I'm jealous of people who can throw painted a canvas and just bring things out of nothing. But this is about as close as I get. And unfortunately, I have tried with a few of these that I liked a lot. I tried to sort of remake them and scale them up into like a big finished piece, and they looked horrible. They lost all the spontaneity, and it just didn't work out. So they are what they are. They're all, you know, they're all about hand sized, and they're usually tacked up on the edge of my easel while I'm painting. So, and just to do color tests to make sure, you know, I'm not going too dark or too light. All right, on to the next. All right, these are definitely outliers. Okay, so we've got something here in the Catskills, an invasive exotic bug, and it's called an emerald ash borer. And it eats ash trees in Asia, but in Asia, of course, the ash trees are adapted to the bug, whereas our ash trees here are not. And so a good part of our forest here is the ash trees are dying. They have no defense against it. And so it burrows into the tree, and then it lays its little evil babies, and they crawl out and they eat underneath the bark. And so I've been these are all over. It's been happening for the last probably good 10 years. And I've been noticing how great the actual patterns that the evil babies have left in the bark, you know, under the bark. Actually, it's in the tree near the studio. And I kept looking at it going, that's just a great, like, it's just a block print, right? So I went and I just did monoprints straight off the tree with a roller and block printing ink, and just hand rubbed it off the tree. So that's about as abstract as I'm going to get, but I kind of like it. I was trying to figure out, you know, what to do with it, but I don't know where it's going to go, but it's a start of something. All right, next up. Okay, so this is my wife gets photo credit for this painting too. She took this also in Pacific Grove. So this is sort of an oversized watercolor, about almost 3 feet wide. And this was another one that had been drawn in, and then I chickened out and didn't do it because I didn't feel like I had enough time to finish it. And so I felt like I did the other two first. I needed to warm up a little bit to make sure that, I didn't want to mess that sky up. It needed to be really clean. And so that's one of those ones where I really have to hold my breath and see how it turns out. But I was pleased, this one, I adapted the photo a fair amount. In the photo, you could see some landforms in the foreground, and I felt like it was distracting, and I just pulled that out. And this kind of relates to a whole group of work that I go back to, that I started doing maybe about 15 years ago, a whole series of silhouetted botanical studies. And some of those were shown at Pitzer during that solo show. And, they kind of went with the same idea of, that really came out of being in a very jungly environment where there were just layers and layers and layers of 1,000 different greens and all these leaf shapes. And it was really sort of too much to absorb. And so I started, from photos I'd taken, I started just pulling out, one or two different shapes, leaf shapes, or focusing on one tree or one plant, or one bough of a plant, even, just to pull that out so that you could appreciate it, instead of just being completely visually like slammed by the jungle. So that's kind of where it started. And so I've kept going back to it. I really enjoy it. So I realize how much information you can give in a complete silhouette. Your eye starts to fill stuff in for you when the silhouette's done well. All right, on to the next. There we go. So there's the one that was on the invite. So this one, a little different. So this one I was working off one of my photos again. And I was actually working off a 35 millimeter slide. So I used to almost only take slide film, color slide film. I really love the saturation, and the color is so great. And so it's interesting because I put the slide in a little tiny handheld viewer, and I just hold it up to my eye and sort of check it, repeatedly check it for to lead my drawing and my painting. So it's interesting to me how the base of the painting, how the photo, depending on its medium, changes how I'm working, so yeah, I'm really pleased with this. This was a giant tree in Maui, what they call upcountry, like up the mountain. And the tree felt like it was one of those trees you walk sort of into it, and it felt like a small planet. It felt like the canopy of the tree was like the outside edge of a dome. It was unbelievable. So it was one of those things where I had the image, and I knew I wanted to do something with it, and it just sort of, I needed to be gutsy enough to try it. And so I was pretty happy with it. All right, on to the next. Oh, okay. So this is the piece that I'm still working on now, which is continuing on. So that's a photo I took a few years ago, it looks like November in 2016. So it's like one of those things. I have a folio of these photos, that I print them out, and then I don't work on them, and then they sit around, and then finally I say, well, finally it's time. So yeah, I just love the ferns, the fall ferns against this dark background. I just thought it was popping so well. So, well, you can, on to the next, you'll see the beginning. All right, so that's the drawing. Kind of hard to see. But, so I was trying to get all the ferns in, the tree, and then just get everything placed correctly. And, you've got a lot of hope at that point, a lot of white paper, but a lot of hope. All right, next. So things are coming in. It's funny to have looking at these now when I've just been looking at it almost complete on the easel. So yeah, so at this point it gets easier the more things I get in there, because I can figure out where I am. In the beginning, I feel like I'm lost in all that leaf litter and stuff. What else? We have one more. Oh, okay. So yeah, so the leaves are coming, and it's building these layers, and at some point, where I am now in the image, I feel like I'm not referring back to the photo very, that much anymore. But at this point, I'm really trying to figure out how much to add. I'm not trying to be a photorealist. I'm just trying to get get the idea across. Because I could spend a year painting this thing. But I was just trying to get that feel of the dark forest and the light ferns. Do we have a detail at the end? Oh no, so here we keep going. So yeah, so the dark leaf litter's coming in slowly. And yeah, I'm being careful, I can't go backwards with the watercolor paint, which is a blessing and a curse, right? You can never overwork your painting forever, because it'll just be a gray mess. So I'm making sure I don't overpaint my ferns and my other leaves and things. And so I'm putting the puzzle together. All right. So there's a close-up. So this is getting there. I'm still working on it. I was working on it for a few hours, and so the leaf litter's getting darker. The tree, I'm darkening the tree up even more. And yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I need to go back in and add some more like gold to the ferns, or if I like them that pale. But yeah, I mean, I've been painting at the easel long, 25 years plus, since school. And I feel like I constantly learn that, every color you add changes every other color, and every tone you add changes everything. And if you add something really dark, all those darks that you thought were strong enough aren't anymore. So you gotta go back. And so I don't know. But I feel like with these, I get to a point where, for me, like the most abstract way I'm working, when I'm working on that leaf litter in there, I'm not looking at the photo. It's almost like I'm just doing a pattern off the top of my head. Like I know how I want the leaves to be sitting and where the shadows are going, and my hand is just sort of like filling things in, and I'm not really, it's a little bit automatic in a strange way. And I kind of forget what I'm doing a little bit, which can lead to going over a section I don't want to go over, but most of the time I can kind of keep it together. So that's where I am. And I don't know, when I started this, often the idea at the start and the ending thing are two totally different things. When I first started it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be looser about it and not go so crazy on the leaves, and I was gonna leave the birch tree, a little bit washy, but that's out the window, and it's getting tighter. where should we go from now?
Well, first of all, can you hear me? My internet went out for a sec. Sorry about that.
Sure.
First of all, I just want to thank you so much for that fabulous talk that you've just given us. It's very rare to get such, in-depth insight into an artist's practice, and you went into so much depth about your work. And for me, it was a real joy, and I'm sure for everybody else here, on this call. I'd like to open it up at this point. Well, first of all, I would really thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please. So I'd like to open it up at this point to questions. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask Sean.
I'll jump in. Hi, Sean.
Hey, what's up, Whitey?
Hi, Heather.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Portland right now, so I'm sitting in my dad's office. I'm helping out my parents. But
oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's great to see you. So, I've always been curious about who your influences are. Who would you say?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's really tough for me. I like a lot of different work. Right. And sometimes I gravitate towards work that looks nothing like mine. I mean, I'd love to be able to do a stain painting like Helen Frankenthaler or something, but I just don't have that in me. And then I like a lot of figurative work that I don't really do, which I feel like maybe is my next big hurdle. I should just not paint any trees or rocks or anything and just paint humans for like 5 years and see if I can get good at it. I still go to sketch class sometimes, so I do suffer through that, which is pretty tough, but it's definitely a very harsh realization of your drafting skills. So I think, sometimes I feel like a little bit out of time, like I should have been, like a quote scientist, but in like 1840, when a scientist meant you just looked at stuff and drew it and maybe licked it a couple of times. And then, that was it. My math skills were never good enough to be a modern scientist or biologist. So I couldn't do that. But yeah, like I look at the people who, traveled west, with westward expansion painting and sort of sending stuff back. Like, this is what we're seeing, I love that stuff. And it doesn't hurt to be up in the Catskills with like Hudson River School is kind of around us all the time. But yeah, I have it's a million people I like. And then people are always like, who's your favorite? I'm definitely drawn to like, people who can really draft well. I'm always amazed at, but then on the other hand, I'd love to throw paint like Motherwell or something, but it's too bad you're not in your studio, Whitey.
I know. I would love to, and I still have that page from your sketchbook.
Oh, nice. I don't even remember which one it is.
It's a hawk head with a
cool
pastel. I have that up.
Nice. I actually
have
something I've been meaning to send to you that I found in my flat file, but I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but it's old. It's old, and you'll when you see it, it will mean something to you.
Okay, great. I'll email my address to the
Excellent.
alumni folks.
Lovely.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
You should do the next one. Whitey's up next.
Okay, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, you should. You should. I'd love to see you, because I feel like I don't see that much of your work now.
Right.
Yeah. I need to be on Facebook more. Thanks for coming, Whitey.
Thanks.
Well, we'll definitely be getting in touch, Julia. Just a heads up on that.
This is this is such a great program. Thanks for doing it.
Oh no, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. So are there any other questions for Sean that anybody would like to ask? Yeah.
Hi, Sean.
Hi. Hey, what's up? It's old home week. What's happening?
A1.
How are you? Yeah.
Good.
Where are you?
I'm in Portland.
Nice.
I'm down the hill from Julia, or I don't know where.
Cool.
Where her dad's office is right now, but
That's excellent.
yeah, I'm in Portland. Hey, I was thinking about like just how much time you spend. I mean, I was aware of this when we were in school, but just how long you're looking at these images, and especially working with the photographs or working from images of places where you return, or places that you know really well. And I mean, this is maybe a little not so much about the craft, but more about your relationship to those places. How, if you can even, I don't know if you can verbalize, but how does that relationship change in what way?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I mean, I feel like when you, I don't know, it's interesting to me because when I start looking at the photo and I feel like I'm absorbing it. And then after painting the paint, so I was doing the tree series and I did this huge one. The most recent big one I did was like how big was it? Almost 5 foot wide watercolor of a banyan tree from Maui.
Wow.
And I don't think I've ever worked on a painting longer. I took, it was on the easel for like 4 or 5 months. And I felt like, and I wasn't working off a great image. I'm working off this digital print and, just off the home printer. It's not some great image, but I felt like I kept seeing more. Like I'm looking at it and I'm, every few weeks or so, I'd notice something else as the painting was building up. I felt like I was going deeper into the photo. And I felt like you really start to like really absorb it, in a very different way than just looking at it on the surface, like you start, just seeing, like, even when I was halfway through the painting, I would see a color or something in the photo that I hadn't really noticed or like felt like I'm zooming in slowly and getting more and more in there. Until I'm like, and by the end of the 4 months or whatever, I was really sick of it. And I was like, didn't want to look at the photo anymore. But I feel like you kind of, I don't know, it's like you're ingesting it at some point. You really like, and then it's weirdly in you, like it's become part of you. And that image is like seared somewhere in the back of your head, even, like my mother, I pull out paintings of my mother's from her studio that she painted, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And she's like, I don't even remember that painting. And then she looks at it and she's like, oh, I know who that is. Like, I remember that, oh, that was so-and-so. So it's like, it's, even if you forget it, it's still like deep back in there. But yeah, that's a good question. Like the photo's one thing, but you really, sort of mining the photo, like really like going into it. And then there's also like that point where I have to, I could just keep painting, like the ferns that I'm working on now. I could keep painting on it for 3 more months and it could just get more and more tight and detailed. But that's not where I want to go. So I need to sort of, it's almost like giving myself a deadline. Like, okay, a couple more days. I need to make some decisions, and then I'll walk away from it. I'll be happy. But thank you. That's good. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. That was a great answer. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I love the series. Thank you for to everyone who organized it. This is fun.
That's great. That's like old home. So obviously, I need to go to the Northwest Coast, which I haven't been anywhere. If we could travel, yeah, road trip, it could happen. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Um,
Say hi to Coco.
I will. I think she's watering the garden right now.
Thank you for that great question. Does anybody else have a question for Sean? Or a comment? It doesn't have to be a question, it can just be a comment. I actually had a question for you, Sean. Sorry,
Okay.
did somebody want to say? I had a question for you about your, I was really excited to see the way that you were talking about, you know, the natural forms, like the soft coral and so on, that are becoming more and more isolated, in a sense. And so in a way, they suggest these sort of fantastical, you know, landscapes, or sort of merging of, you know, natural and artificial.
Right.
So I wondered whether you could talk a little bit more about that, and also whether you think that your work is becoming, you know, more abstract.
Oh yeah, I think it is. I mean, look back at some of my stuff, you know, for years, like after Pitzer, for a good 5 years, I just painted sort of straight watercolor landscapes, you know, and I look back on them, I like them, but they definitely, my wife was saying, you should really paint sort of a straight landscape again. You don't really do that anymore, you know? And I look back on them, and it's a totally different thing, you know? Yeah, pulling them apart and zooming in, leads to more, even if it's realism, it leads to sort of abstracted realism. And I've actually been really toying with going sort of microcosmos stuff. You know, the power of digital photography and things like the ability to zoom in. I've been really getting into just patterns, you know, and at some point, what are they? You know, they're just colors and shapes. You know, I've got this photo that I've been thinking about for years, and I haven't done it yet. And I just got this amazing photo of an unbelievable, I don't know if it was like a locust, but it was some giant grasshopper, and it had amazing sort of like camouflage color. And I got a great picture of it, and zooming into it, it just looks like it's like some kind of futuristic tank. You know, you can't really tell what it is, but you can see these plates and the way the colors fade in between each other is just unbelievable. And I've been thinking I'd really like to mine that and go fall down that rabbit hole a little bit. I've done some other sort of oversized animal studies. You know, I did for a show a few years ago. I did a giant salamander and a moth and a spider, all, you know, 50 times life size. And they were really fun too. Like the moth became just sort of this like kimono or something, you know. It was, and yeah, and you never get to look at a moth like that, you know. You never get to really see it like that because it's too small or it's too fast or whatever. So it's, I love it, and it's about, as you know, since I can't just put the colors together out of my head, it's about as close to being like a true abstractionist as I get, you know. I did some small oil panels of you know, a vision of the Earth from space, or maybe like some kind of, you know, ice flows in dark water, or, you know, you couldn't really tell what it was, but it was, I was just, so yeah, I do feel like I'm getting that way, even technically, as I get more adept in like rendering things, it's leading me to be more abstract in a way, you know. But I do think back on stuff like I did at Pitzer, and I look back at it, it seems very simple now to me, like technically, but sometimes it's like just because you have a bigger toolbox doesn't mean you make a better painting, right? Like, you know, sometimes you have too many tricks. You know, you don't need to use all the tricks. You know, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any better. So I need to remind myself of that. And, you know, simplicity is great also, you know, and yeah, so I need to look back at that and sometimes, you know, not you put away all the small brushes, basically. It's what my mom says. She's like, no more small brushes for you, only big brushes. So I need to listen to that sometimes and sort of, or just even set sort of barriers for myself. Like, okay, yeah, I'm only going to work on this piece for a day, so it's going to be done today, or something like that. You know, you learn a lot from that, I think. You know, give yourself, let's say, just give yourself a project, like just like you would have in school. You know, you need to start and finish this thing in a day, and see how much you can get or how far you need to get. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for that. Well, I think we've come to the end of the talk, but if there's any final comment or question, I hope Sean wouldn't mind staying on for a second.
I wouldn't mind.
If there's not, I just want to, you know, thank you again for spending the time with us today. And it's just been so wonderful, you know, from me and from everybody else, you know, to hear you talk. So thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you. You're so welcome. It's the COVID silver lining is more time for painting.
Yep. And
it
connecting.
Really is. More time for everything, like, you know, all those things that you wanted to do. You never repainted your garage. You never planted your garden. Now you have no more excuses.
Well, I look forward to seeing you again in your New York studio.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
You're always welcome to come dig through the flat file.
Thank you. All right. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sean.
Bye, Julia. Great to see you.
Yeah, really good to see you too. I'm so jealous of your studio. I mean,
Oh my God.
I'm not jealous.
I'm in it and I'm jealous of my studio. I think my studio in the city is like, I think, you know, I love my studio in the city, but it doesn't hold a candle to this one. Like,
Are you in the same studio in the city that you've been in for a long time?
39th Street. Yeah, I think you were, I've been there 20 years.
Yeah. So
yeah. But it's definitely different. 39th Street, you know, West 39th Street, is a little more distracting.
Yeah.
And a little more gritty. But people always ask me, like, so you paint all this natural stuff, but you're here on 39th Street. Like, well, it doesn't make any sense. So now it seems like it makes more sense. I'm like, I'm surrounded by natural stuff, painting natural stuff. Like, I should be in the city painting trash cans and you know, bricks and things.
I know the window behind you looks like one of your paintings.
Oh yeah, that's the
Just the way it's abstracted on the computer.
Yeah, the nice green on green. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, well, this was great.
Coco showed me the start of one of the painting you were working on like you had drawn in, like you charcoaled in a canvas. Yeah. She was like, yeah. Yeah. It was cool to see the start.
I'll have to get your mailing address, just because I have a lot of postcards and stuff that
cool.
I have it. I have your mailing.
You have it.
I totally have it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys. Well, thanks so much, Sierra and Heather Watkins.
Bye.
Bye, Heather.
Good to see you. Really good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah.
And get out in the woods.
Yeah.
If possible.
Thanks again, Sean.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me.
Oh no, it was our pleasure, really. Excellent. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Sean.
See ya.